acknowledge the United Nations authority to supervise and direct this transfer of military power, and 4, that all nations, including the United States, carry out this transfer to a point where no state would have the military power to challenge the progressively strengthened United Nations Peace Force. Most Americans find it hard to believe that our leaders in Washington would make such a fantastic proposal. This is merely part of the overall plan to resolve our conflict with communism, not by victory over it, but by merging with it into a world body. Since it will have superior military force at its disposal, it will become, by definition, a one-world government.
Living CS, the population says, living CS, the population says, that after 50 years of communism in the Soviet Union, they are now reaching out to the casualist world to get private enterprise, become employers, and productive capacity for consumers in their own country. After 50 years, they now come with a system which some worry was not able to cope with these situations. And we've got to work for the big communist nation, there is a school, and a different philosophy, but they're all here, we have similar common objectives. I say that on a cooperative basis, we can reflect our long-term best interests. And that that's the best way to go about it, and that's the only basis for peace and progress for all the world.
He was responsible for some 40 million deaths. In 1930, peasants' produce began to be collected up. The Red Army, one by one, seized the produce from every single field. Some peasants managed to hide their goods rather than give them up. But Communist Party officials searched every nook and cranny, eventually discovering the hiding places. The officials also seized the peasants' agricultural equipment. The peasants were left with nothing to eat and nothing to work the soil with. Eventually, that catastrophe that Lenin had described as the most useful for communism raised its head again: famine. In Ukraine alone, 6 million people starved over the next few years. 2 million died in Kazakhstan, and 1 million in northern Caucasus. Children reduced to skin and bone died in agony. There was another ghastly result of the famine inspired by Stalin: cannibalism.
It was a mistake to welcome this atheistic murder as a state visitor. But according to President Eisenhower, Khrushchev had expressed a desire to learn something of American agriculture. As we talked face to face, he indicated that my grandchildren would live under communism. After assuring him that I expected to do all in my power to assure that his and all other grandchildren will live under freedom, he arrogantly declared in substance, "You Americans are so gullible. No, you won't accept communism outright, but we'll keep feeding you small doses of socialism until you finally wake up and find you already have communism. We won't have to fight you. We'll so weaken your economy until you fall like overripe fruit into our hands."
When cosmic agents or any other team goes back in time, we all have to remember that there are ripple effects that are caused where the sum of all of our choices echoes throughout eternity. This ripple effects indicators keep track of the consequences in the case that some major catastrophic event occurs because of how certain choices summed up. For example, one of us steps on a bug, which bug thus ends up not having offspring that rippled down through the centuries or echoes down through the centuries in later generations. that should have come through the bug's genealogical lineage, but of which was stopped when it was squished, which resulted in a medical student of the future not being able to find the later generations of that bug in a particular place to be found and captured, resulting in the fluid of later descendants of that bug thus not extracted from its mouth, the medical student thus not discovering a vaccine, and so on, down through the ripple effects in the time-space wake of the sum of all of our choices. A person could go crazy thinking about it, and there were times when things happened on a mission where agents just couldn't worry about each choice while they were defending themselves in battle, or from the diverse types of insects and creatures that sometimes attack them. That's why there were also timeline ripple effects repair agents who would clean up the mess after or during our missions. But that's another story. Killing other creatures or any living thing while back in time or while in your own lifetime thus had ripple effects, consequences that echoed throughout eternity, which is one of the main reasons why Universal Mission Command is real big on martial arts, as compared to a bunch of trigger-happy cosmic warriors toting around a bunch of deadly weapons, shooting up the place. It's not that we didn't have different types of weapons available, but we have an ever-increasing endless choice of weapons, gadgets, inventions, protective devices, poisons, and all manners of weapons of war to choose from as they came from the different inhabited worlds' creativities of coming up with endless ways of taking life or healing life form. We had, if we absolutely needed them, all kinds of different types of weapons, but Universal Mission Command preferred that we use our communicative skills to get us out of situation. Next, our martial arts skills. And as a last resort, if it was unavoidable, our diverse types of gifts, skills, abilities, and weapons to defend ourselves with. We also found that it was the best thing to do to guise our weapons into objects of the areas that we went into, so that the locals wouldn't see that we were armed to the teeth. For what to them looked like a walking staff was to us a shocking traditional ray gun that also had other devices placed in it that could be used as needed for whatever situation might arise, and which was being communicated and forewarned to us by Universal Mission Command, could result in, as each of us were making different choices along the way during our different missions. Thus, to be able to blend in with the locals or stay out of sight, not to become so noticeable that the memories of what the team did became legends of what the gods or the demons did, were ripple effects that we tried to avoid. We weren't to have monuments later built in our honor, or strange religious cults build up around the locals' memories of what would be to them miraculous feats of magic. For those types of timeline ripple effects were difficult to repair for the different repair teams that would later try to clean up the mess after our missions. Thus, being a cosmic agent was a lot of responsibility, and it wasn't the easiest job in the universe, but we enjoyed the good consequences that resulted from the sum of all of our choices when entire inhabited worlds could be thus saved and left alone to grow and progress, hopefully for good rather than for bad. We want to glory in ourselves for bringing about such things because of all the other help that we got along the way, too. After all, we were just mortals, helping the good angels, who in turn didn't like to take credit and would always remind us, glory be to the gods and goddesses of the families in the heavens and not to us. Thus, we weren't to also become legends in our own minds, too, because that's one of the reasons why some of the good angels fell to become the devil and his demonic forces of darkness. It was pride. Pride caused their fall, and pride causes the fall of nations in many cases. That's what many figured was the sum of all the fallen angels' choices.